Very good evening to one and all. Today we gather not for an academic event to honor one of the most sacred occasions in the Indian spiritual calendar, Buddha Purnima. This day marks the birth, enlightenment, and parinirvana of Gautam Buddha, the compassionate sage whose teachings of suffering, detachment, and the path to liberation have shaped civilizations and inspired seekers across millennia. As the full moon rises, illuminating minds and hearts alike, we take this opportunity to reflect on the origins of Buddhism in ancient India, not as a relic of the past, but as a living, evolving tradition deeply embedded in our heritage. To commemorate this occasion, the International Society for Indian History and Archaeology, which is very recently instituted, the International Virashaiva Jangam Research Pratisthana and the Akshara Foundation Dharwad have come together to host this online lecture. As a representative of all three organizations, I welcome you all to this gathering, and I also welcome our resource person for today, Dr. Shrikant Ganvir sir. So welcome you. I welcome Dr. R.M. Shadaksharaya sir, the president of today's lecture, as well as the president of all the three organizations. A gesture of scholarly homage to Buddha's enduring legacy, that is today's lecture. I would now like to introduce our today's speaker. Dr. Shrikant Ganvir needs no elaborate introduction in the world of Indian archaeology and Buddhist studies, but allow me to do the honor of doing honors. Dr. Shrikant Ganvir is currently serving as Assistant Professor at the Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, deemed to be University, Pune. He also lends his expertise as a visiting faculty member in the Department of Pali and Buddhist Studies at Savitribai Phule Pune University. A recipient of both the UGC Junior and Senior Research Fellowships, Dr. Ganvir has combined scholarship with field work in the most meaningful way. He has co-directed major archaeological excavations from Nagardhan and eastern Vakataka capital in Maharashtra to the important Buddhist site of Phanigiri in Telangana, and is currently co-directing excavations at Chada, Telangana. His work even extends beyond Indian shores, having participated in the Rajagala archaeological research project in Sri Lanka. His editorial contributions include works like a preliminary report of the excavations at Nagardhan, cultural heritage of South Asia and beyond, and Telangana through the ages, all of which are critical readings for scholars in the field. He has also served as an advisor to the Buddha Vanam project under the government of Telangana, a unique initiative highlighting the heritage of Buddhism. Dr. Ganvir also champions accessible education as the course coordinator for the certificate course in Archaeology of Buddhism at Deccan College and the UGC SWAYAM uh, MOOC on Buddhist tourism. With over 35 research papers to his name, his work spans across Buddhist rock cut architecture, iconography, and the religious paradigms of the Deccan, all forming the mosaic of his nuanced and layered approach to the past. Friends, today we have before us not only an academic but also a passionate field archaeologist and a vibrant communicator of South Asia's Buddhist heritage. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Shrikant Ganvir to enlighten us on the origin and developments of Buddhism in ancient India. Over to you, sir. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to welcome and introduce. I now request Dr. Ganvir to take over from here. Uh, Sir, did you all hear the introduction and welcome that I said?
Yes, now I am basically
Yeah,
sharing
sorry.
PPT.
I was just checking, sir, because I had just left the meeting for a second there. Your PPT is on the screen, sir. I am sharing it for you.
Is PPT visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
It is not visible to me. I don't know.
Uh, Sir, Yeah, the slides are moving. So can you not see the PPT?
No.
So are you on the page of StreamYard on the web page?
Yes, yes.
So there is a box where all the participants are being shown. So I suggest otherwise to exit the meeting and join again in a second, so that
Yes.
because we can see the slides moving. Sorry for the technical glitch. Sir will be joining soon.
Yes.
So can you? Yes, now it is visible, sir.
Yes.
Yes, over to you, sir.
Good evening to all of you. Respected Chairperson, Professor Akshara sir, the Treasurer of the Akshara Foundation and the coordinator of the today's lecture, Manali Madam, all the office bearers of the three organizations, International Society for Indian History and Archaeology, International Virashaiva Jangam Research Pratisthana, and Akshara Foundation, Dharwad. At the outset, I express my sincere thanks and gratitude for inviting me to deliver a lecture on the occasion of Buddha Jayanti, the Vaishak Purnima. Thank you, sir, and thank you, the organizers and office bearers of the all three important organizations working in the field of history, archaeology, and culture. Today, I'm going to talk a brief lecture on origin and development of Buddhism in ancient India. The lecture has been designed to give information to general audience to know the historical development of Buddhism in ancient India. As we know, the sources play a vital role in the reconstruction of the any ancient or early medieval history. Likewise, when we talk about the reconstruction of ancient Indian religious history, textual sources, archaeological sources, and the foreign account or sources no doubt play a seminal role in the understanding the sketch of ancient Indian history in general and the history of Buddhism in particular. Textual sources consist of canonical text, that is a Pali Tripitaka, the commentaries on Pali Tripitaka, which was mostly composed during the 4th 5th centuries of the Common Era, that is Attakatha, post-canonical texts such as a Milindapanyo or Questions of King Menander, and the Sanskrit text or Buddhist Sanskrit text, that is the Agamas, the text from the Avadhan tradition, for example, the Vyodhan or Mahavastu Avadhan, to name a few. Besides this, some texts such as a biographic text on the Buddha, that is a Buddha Charit by Acharya Ashwaghosh, is also among the important texts. Archaeological sources mainly include architectural remains such as the remains of the stupa, vihar, that is a sangharam, and other monastic architecture, epigraphic evidence, a corpus of more than thousands and thousands inscriptions, coins, ceilings, and other archaeological artifacts, that is antiquities. Foreign account mainly the account of the Chinese, Tibetan, Sri Lankan, and other Southeast Asian, and East Asian countries provide similar information to understand not only interaction of ancient India with these countries but also a journey of Buddhism across the boundaries of ancient India. As we are looking into the origin of Buddhism, let me briefly talk about Shramanic culture. As we know, the 6th century before Common Era was one of the vibrant centuries of ancient India, which witnessed the emergence and dissemination of Shramanic culture. The Shramanic religions, such as Jainism, Buddhism, Ajivikas, to name a few, played a significant role in making of this century and severely influenced society, economy, polity, and the philosophical matrix of this century. As I said, the 6th century before Common Era was one of the important centuries of ancient India, which witnessed major breakthrough changes in Indian culture. While understanding the emergence of Shramanic culture and the development, one has to also understand role of contemporary socio-economic, political, and religious settings. How socio-economic settings, political setup, and the religious dimensions played an important role to bring about change in a cultural matrix of ancient India, which gave birth to the shamanic culture. Among the shamanic religious traditions, one of the most important and significant traditions was no doubt Buddhism. When we talk about the religious settings, this last 7th century before Common Era to 6th century before Common Era witnessed the flourishment of Vedic religion, which was dominated by the sacrificial rituals, and as we know from the 8th century before Common Era, the land of ancient India witnessed the making of the ancient Indian philosophical discourses, that is the Upanishads. When we look at the corpus of Buddhist and Jain texts, especially Buddhist texts provide an interesting information about the presence of different religious thoughts. As per the Buddhist sources, there were not less than 62 different religious thoughts. This, this information is more than enough to understand how the contemporary society witnessed the emergence of different schools of thoughts, different philosophical schools, and gave spaces for the further advanced discussion on the fundamental religious issues. When we look at a socio-economic setting, as we know, this period was also marked by the second urbanization. From the late 7th century BC and from to the early 6th century BC, when we look at archaeological settings or the material culture of ancient India, we can see how the second urbanization, the waves of second urbanization had brought major changes or transformation in a material culture. The establishment of the urban centers, the expansion of the roads, the further network of pathways, as we know about the Dakshinapath and Uttarapath. Beside Dakshinapath and Uttarapath, we have had the network of various pathways, which further facilitate a network of trade through these pathways. As we know, the trade was prosperous. This time period also witnessed the usage and the prevalence of the currencies. As generally we know, the early currency as a punchmark coins. The now the evidence of the early writings are also going back from the regions of South India. So more or less, These centuries also witnessed the evidence of early writings. So this was how the second urbanization had brought major change in a life and of the contemporary society, which further also led to the establishment of the very well settled political condition. The 16 Mahajanpadas and many Mahajanpadas, along with the Ganarajas, which are also referred to as the Sangarajas, had vibrantly working for the public welfare activities, for the welfare of citizens or the praja. And among these 16 Mahajanpadas, as we know, the Magadhan Empire or the Magad Mahajanpad, which further developed into the Magadhan Empire, had very strong established its very strong roots in the belts of northern and eastern India. As we know, among many religious teachers of the 6th century BC, Siddhartha Gautam, who later became the Buddha, Samyak Sambuddha, and also known as Gautam Buddha, was one of such a well-known religious teachers who had established the Dhamma, which also known as the teachings of Buddha or the Buddhism. As we know, among many Ganarajas or the Shakya Sangharajas, on especially the north eastern and the north eastern regions of the ancient India, the Shakyas occupied a prominent place. Shakyas, who were ruling from Kapilvastu, was basically ruled by King Shuddhodhan, the father of Siddhartha Gautam. Siddhartha Gautam was born on the eve of Vaishakha Purnima at Lumbini. He spent his early life at Kapilvastu, then the capital of the Shakyas. Kapilvastu, no doubt, played the most important and vibrant role in the making of Siddhartha Gautam and his thought process. Further, at the age of 29, Siddhartha Gautam had left the palace, and the event has been recorded in the history of Buddhism as a great departure or Mahavinishkrama. After the penances of many years, Siddhartha Gautam had got victory over the Mar, the personification of evil, and the event is known as a Maru Vijay, and had got Samyak Sambodhi. He became Samyak Sambuddha after the great event of Sambodhi, that is the enlightenment at Bodh Gaya. After getting enlightenment, Siddhartha Gautam, who now had become the Buddha, Gautam Buddha, was started propagating his teachings. He accidentally met the five old friends who got converted into the order of the monks, which was established after their entry into the monastic order, and the five members, who are also known as a Panchavagya Bhikkhu, became the first disciples of the Buddha. The Buddha had delivered the first sermon at Isipatanamugadai, that is the present day Sarnath near Varanasi, and this sermon, which consists of the central philosophy and teachings of the Buddha, is known as Dhammachakka Pavatana Sutta, which means the discourse regarding the rotation of the wheel of the Dhamma, that is Buddha's teaching. And after delivering his first sermon, that is the Dhammacakkappavana Sutta, Buddha had extensively traveled till his last breath, that is the Mahaparinirvan, in the many regions, cities, villages, urban centers of North and Eastern and many parts of ancient India. For the propagation of his religious teachings, that is for the mission of Dhamma, the cities or the urban centers which had played very important role mostly include Rajagruha, then the capital of the Magad Mahajanapada, Shravasti, where one of his favorite disciples, who was the best in the Dana Paramita, had established a monastic establishment known as the Jetavana or Jetavana Sangharam, and Vaishali, which was then the capitals of the Lichavis as well as an important urban center. So, most of his life was spent in many urban centers, which mostly include Rajagruha, Shravasti, and Vaishali. As per the tradition of the Pali canonical texts, it is said that the Buddha had spent maximum number of his Varshavasas, that is a rainy retreat, at Shravasti. And that is why when we look at the beginning of many of the discourses given by the Buddha, it starts with Eva me sutang ekasamayam Bhagava Sravastit Vihrati Jetavane Anakapindakassa Aramakase. So the once I heard that the Buddha, that is a Bhagwan Buddha, was staying at Jetavanaram, that is a Jetavana Sangharam at Shravasti, constructed by Anath Pind. And then at Vaishali, he declared that he is going to attain Mahaparinirvan at Kushinara. When we look at the origin and development of early Buddhism, very important is to see, as we know that the 6th century BC and the socio-economic as well as religio-political matrix or dimensions had set up favorable conditions for the emergence of the Shramanic culture. Shamanic culture, as we know, the known after the Sharmanas, that is the basically the full-time religious teachers who left their homes or their householder life and became wanderers, going from one place to another for the propagation of their respective teachings. As the Buddha, in his first sermon, had given instructions to his fellow monks, Charata Bhikkave Charikam Bhujanitaya Bhojana Sukaya, for well-being of the society, well-being of the people of the society, the you, that is the monks, are advised to always wander from one place to another. As the teachings of Buddha is a separate or of such a vast topic of a lecture, but when we look at the salient features, so how what Buddha advised or what the Buddha had thought of his teachings, it should be observed, followed by disciples, by the people, which mostly include to maintain of the purity of life, to reach perfection in life, to give up craving. That is a karma. And that is why the Eightfold Path was developed, designed and developed by the Buddha, which further l- leads to giving up cravings. To believe all compound things are impermanent, that is, Sabhe Sankhara Anicca, nothing remains permanent. To believe that karma is a significant in establishing moral order, that is, how your action, that is a kushal action, good action, as well as kushala karma, that is a good action, as well as akushala karma, that is a bad action, influence your life. Buddha also clearly taught that he did not believe in any kind of the supernatural power. He did not believe in any kind of the sacrificial rituals. Also, didn't believe in a sacred nature of the books, as well as did not believe in a kind of the speculations or the destiny. Among the central philosophy of the Buddha, the Four Noble Truths occupy the most significant place, which include dukkha, that is the sufferings, dukkha samudaya, that is the reason for the suffering, dukkha nirodha, that is the elimination of the dukkha, and dukkha nirodhagamini patipada, a well structured, well designed, the eightfold path, eightfold path to for the elimination of the sufferings. And this path, which is known as a Dukkha Nirodhagamini Patipada, or also referred to as Arya Ashtangika Magga, that is the Arya Ashtangika Marga, includes the eight important principles, that is the right understanding about the life, Samadhi, the elimination of the bad thought and the development of good thought or the right thoughts, that is the Samma Sankappa, the uses of right, that is a polite speech, and the speech with the kindness, the truth, and always getting away from the gossip, backbiting, the false speech, that is the Samma Vacha, right speech, Samma Kammanta, that is one should get involved in a right action, that is not to kill any animal, that is a non-violence, not to kill, not to get engaged in any kind of misconduct, sexual misconduct, and also to not to have any kind of intoxicating drinks. Samma Ajiva, that is a way for the right livelihood, mostly suggests to keeping away the people from the occupation of poison, occupation of flesh, occupation of weapons, to mention a few. Then, for further spiritual development towards the path suggested by Buddha, one has to always do the right effort, that is a samyak vaya. For the mindfulness, samma sati, that is a samma sati, and the further stage of a right mindfulness leads to the samma samadhi, that is a right concentration. The Panchashila, that is a five precepts, includes non-violence, non-stealing, non-sexual misconduct, truth, and non-taking of intoxicating liquors. Then we have the concept of anicca. As I said, Sabbe Sankhara Anicca, which is one of the most significant teachings of the Buddha to this world, which is a theory of impermanence. There is a echo.
I have noted the other party, so it's fine now.
So, what exists is a changeable, and what is not changeable does not exist. Then, along with the theory of anicca, we have the theory of anatta, that is a sabbe dhamma anatta, which talks about the basically egolessness or the soullessness, and which talks that the attadipa bhava, attai atthano nato, that one is a basically uh, one is responsible for his or her, that someone's development, mental, spiritual, moral development. The 10 paramitas, that is the 10 virtues, provide that how the observance of these different virtues further led to the observance of the Buddha's teaching. One of the another important philosophical contributions of the Buddha to the human world is a theory of dependent origination. That is a theory of cause and action. That is a pratitya samutpad, also known as a law of dependent origination, which can be summarized like this: when this is, that is, that this arising, that arising; when this is not, that is not; this ceases, that ceases. As we know, this mind, that is a mana, had got the most significant role, and how it has been the early gathas or early two verses of the first Vagga, that is the Yamak Vagga of Dhammapad, one of the most sacred Buddhist texts, are basically talk about the role of mind. that how all actions are being controlled, governed by the mind. Then coming to the basically what made the such a rapid dissemination of Buddhism in couple of centuries during the lifetime of the Buddha and after his Mahaparinibbana. So the nature of Dhamma, the simple nature of Buddha's teaching, which was based on the observance of the ethical principles and further led to spread Buddhism among common masses. The methods of propagation. When we look at many of the texts, especially the Nikayas, and we find, for example, Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, or Samyutta Nikaya, to name a few, the method of the propagation of the teaching was a kind of different, mostly based on dialogue. And we find that the formation of many of the suttas or the discourses was based on the system of the dialogue, which further helped the devotees, disciples, or also those who are not the followers, made to enter in his order of teachings. So the dialogue was one of the most important methods of propagation which was adopted by the Buddha and his disciples, that is the fellow monks, for the propagation of his teaching. The use of popular language, that is a Pali, which was a spoken language, also known as a Magadhi, was so influential that his teachings spread among common masses. The establishment of the Sangha, that is a monastic order, first for the members of for male members, that is the monks, and later on the females, that is the nuns, was one of the most important contributions of Buddhism and Shraman religious traditions, and in general, and Buddhism in particular. So the monastic order, Buddhist monastic order, further developed the role models before the society. The members of the Sangha were following the principles, the values, the virtues taught by Buddha, and those members of the Buddhist Sangha eventually stood among the society or were basically guiding the society as a models. So probably they were continuously going from one place to another as according to the monastic rules, that is the Vinaya Pitaka, they were not allowed to stay at any place for more than 2 or 3 days. So as they were continuously moving with an exception of the Varshavasa, that is the time period of the rainy retreat, and propagating Buddha's teaching in a very simple, lucid language and giving the focus or the major attention on the practical aspect, that is the observance of the principles. As we know, any religion or any religious tradition could not be or cannot be disseminate or the propagate without the patronage. So patronage is the most significant factor or one of the most significant factors in the process of the dissemination of any religious order or tradition. So likewise, the Buddhism, since its establishment, had got patronage from the dynastic families or the ruling families, that is the royal patronage, as well as the patronage from the traders, mercantile community, the different occupational groups, guilds, the scholars such as Professor Vidya Dehija and Professor Y.S. Alone, they have considered this important aspect and term such as collective or community patronage. So along with the royal patronage, community patronage had played a seminal role in the propagation and the dissemination of Buddhism. As we know, the scholars consider the network of ancient trade routes and the location of the Buddhist monastic centers. The study of ancient trade routes and the Buddhist monastic centers make us to look the aspect of how trade played vibrant role in the dissemination of shamanic religions such as Buddhism, Jainism, to mention a few. In the case of Buddhism, as we know, the traders, as known from the or as attested from the corpus of epigraphic evidence, we know that how the traders and they are mentioned in the different inscriptions, either from the Buddhist caves of Western Deccan, such as Junnar, Karle, Pitarkhora, Nasik, Kura, to mention a few, or the Buddhist stupa sites such as the Sanchi, Bharut, Amravati, Nagarjun Konda, to mention a few, suggest that the trade played a vibrant role in the dissemination of Buddha's teaching. Along with the factors mentioned earlier, the nature of Buddhist councils was very important to understand. As we know, the Buddhist textual traditions provide information about the four Buddhist councils. And the first Buddhist council was held immediately or planned to hold immediately after the Mahaparinirvan of the Buddha. But as Venerable Ananda, a personal assistant or upastavak of the Buddha, was yet to attain Arathut, so it was postponed for few months. The first Buddhist council was organized at Rajagala, then the capital of Magad Mahajanapada, under the patronage of King Ajatashatru. It was headed by the senior-most Buddhist monk Mahakassa. Venerable Ananda played a significant role in the compilation of maximum number of the suttas told by the Buddha. As we know, the Pali canonical texts have 84,000 suttas or discourses, whereas another senior Buddhist monk, Venerable Upali, compiled the rules, especially the monastic rules for the members of Buddhist Sangha, which compiled under the title of Vinay Pitaka. Second Buddhist council was held at Vaishali, which was presided by Bhikkhu Sabbakami, and as the during this time, the Buddhist monastic order, the Sangha, witnessed the fractions among the Sangha based on the very basic principles of the observance. And these basic issues or the basic rules are known as a Dasa Vattune. And as one of the important contributions of the Second Buddhist Council was to re- to look after the unity of the members of the Buddhist Sangha and to discuss the observance of the rules as mentioned in the Vinay Pitaka. Then the third Buddhist council, which was held under the patronage of the modern Emperor Ashok at Patliputra, which was presided by Venerable Moghliputra Tissa, played a significant role in the dissemination of Buddhism. One of the most vibrant decisions taken in the Third Buddhist Council was to send Dhamma missionary or the Buddhist monk as a Dhamma missionary to the different parts of India and across India, ancient India. As a part of this policy or this decision, we know that various Buddhist monks were sent to the different part. When they were Son and Uttara were sent to the Suvarna Bhumi, and various Venerable Mahinda and Sanghamitra, they went to ancient Sri Lanka. So, uh, the decision of sending the Dhamma missionaries to the different parts of ancient India and also out of ancient India was remained so significant because of the decisions or this particular decision made in the Third Buddhist Council played seminal role in the preservation of old or original Buddhist traditions. Later on, during the late first century CE or according to the new chronological framework of the Kushanas, in the early second century of Common Era, fourth Buddhist council was held at Kanishkapur, that is in Kashmir, or according to some sources, Jalandhar in Punjab, which was under the presidency of Sumitra, and vice president of the fourth Buddhist council was Venerable Ashok. One of the important contributions of this Buddhist council was to translate the Pali canonical discourses or the text into Sanskrit known as a Vibhasha Shuddha. So, along with the many important factors, the four Buddhist councils played a significant role and the development, the development in a philosophy or mostly the development in a sectarian context have been preserved in the account of four Buddhist councils. When we talk about the royal patronage, we know that the royal patronage, we have to briefly mention the four important personalities or the four important emperors, that is Emperor Ashok and of the Maurya dynasty, Kanishka I of the Kushan dynasty, Harshavardhan of Pushyabhuti dynasty, and Dharmapal of the Pal dynasty. Among many political figures or the many rulers, emperors, kings, these four political powers or the personalities had contributed a lot for the dissemination of Buddhism. Started from Ashok, King Ashok, one of the most important rulers of ancient India, as we know, not only through the Third Buddhist councils, but from his rock edicts and many public welfare activities, he spread the teachings of the Buddha, that is the Dhamma. Along with his seminal contribution in a Third Buddhist council, he patronized the construction of many stupas and monasteries, not only known from the texts such as the Mahavansa, Deepavansa, or Buddhist Sanskrit text Ashokavadhan, but also attested from the data of archaeological excavations. Kanishka I, who patronized the Fourth Buddhist Council, was also an important figure in the dissemination of Buddhist art and architecture. During his time, Gandhar and Mathura art schools were flourished and further gave rise to vibrant, graceful cultural tradition of ancient India. In the beginning of early medieval time period, when the country was witnessing the major political shifts and the emergence of many dynasties, especially in the northern and eastern India. King Harshavardhan of Pushyabhuti patronized the Nalanda Mahavihar, one of the most famous educational center which propagated not only Buddhism but also Indian culture and cultural traditions across the ancient India. And in today's context, the Buddhist monastic university Emperor Dharmapal, who not only patronized the earlier known Buddhist monastic establishment such as the Nalanda, but also established a new university or Buddhist monastic center such as Vikramshila. So, as we know, the royal patronage was very influential for the propagation of Buddhism in not only ancient India but across India. But same time, the corpus of ancient inscriptions talks about the donation given by the commoners, the traders, members of the mercantile community, different occupational groups, guilds, and thus representing the different matrix or the status of the commoners or common society. So, when we talk about the role of royal patronage, one has to also keep in mind the role of community or collective patronage. As we know, the early Buddhism, which was earlier known as the Hinayana, now generally referred to as the Theravada, followed by the Mahayana and Vajrayana. These are the three important phases in Buddhism. So, they represent the further development in a philosophical discourses. What is common in all three major traditions or the phases of Buddhism, as they believe commonly in the Buddha's teachings, the theory of anicca, pratitya samudapad, theory of anatta. So, the theory of the karma, the observance of ethical principles. In a context of the time and space, we may find the further development or a more refined or enlarged versions of the philosophical discourses through the ages. But we have the tradition of the Bodhisattva, the, both in a Theravada as well as in a Mahayana tradition. So, Bodhisattva, along with the Buddhist monks and the nuns, later on we have the concept of the Bodhisattva, which basically, even after getting the some Bodhi, then essence of essence of knowledge, supreme knowledge, you are busy or got engaged in the well-being of others, in the welfare of others. While going through the as the philosophical development, the development through the ages, the profile of the dynastic development of Buddhism is very important. In a pre-Mauryan period, as we know, during the lifetime of the Buddhism, lifetime of the Buddha, Buddhism was flourished in various parts of northern and eastern India. Although we have the few archaeological evidence such as the remains of Nirvana stupas, which were constructed after the Mahaparinibbana of Buddha at Piparva, now known as the Kapilvastu, then the capital of the Shakyas, then Vaishali, then the capital of the Lichavis, recently found with the stupa at Rajagala, then the capital of Magadh, Mahajanapada, and Kushinara, the place where the master attained Mahaparinibbana. The Mauryan period, or the times of the Mauryas, was a most significant time zone in the history of Buddhism. This time period witnessed the vibrant dissemination of Buddhism in many parts of country and also the establishment of a Buddhist cultural activity through the building of stupas, viharas, chaityas or chaitya gharas, and many such more architectural models of Buddhism. As we know, at many places, when we carry out archaeological excavation, especially in a Deccan or in the region of central India or in northern India, even the
upper layers are of late time period, but when we try to find the lowermost level, in the most of the cases, it goes to the 3rd century BC, that is the Mauryan period. So, Mauryan Emperor Ashok and his successors had a play most important and a great role in the in the dissemination of Buddhism. In the Deccan, the time period of the Satavahanas, followed by the Satavahan period, was a such another most significant time zones in the history of Buddhism, which witnessed the excavation of many rock-cut monastic sites in the western Deccan, that is the states of Maharashtra and some part of Gujarat, whereas in the states of eastern Deccan, that is the Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, we have more than 200 Buddhist structural sites where the archaeologists have unearthed the remains of Buddhist monastic complexes. Further, during the time of the Ikshvakus, the religio-cultural tradition of the constructing Buddhist monastic complexes was further flourished, and many more sites such as the Nagarjuna, Phanigiri were flourished during the time of the Ikshvakus. Yes. During the time of the Gupta Vakata period, as we know, the many new establishments were set up. The rock-cut caves, especially during the time period of the Vakatakas, were excavated at Ajanta. The post-Gupta period time period was also important, as we know from the copper plates of the Maitrakas, how Vallabhi and the many such important sites in Gujarat were playing vibrant role in the dissemination of Buddhism. Time period of the post-Guptas, again the time period of the King Harshavardhan, as we know from the account of Chinese traveler Xuanzang, as well as the Harcharita composed by Manabhatta and many other such sources, how the time period of the Harshavardhan was such a important time period in the dissemination of Buddhism. Coming to the last but very important phase of a early medieval time period when Palas were ruling in the parts of the eastern India. The kings such as Dharmapal and his successors such as Devapal, Vigrapal, to name a few, contributed immensely for the propagation of Buddha's teaching by establishing the Buddhist monastic complexes or the education centers. For example, the Vikramshila was established during the time period of the Dharmapal. So, from the 6th century before Common Era till the 13th, 14th, or in some parts of the country, such as some parts of the Tamil Nadu or some parts of the northeastern states and the northern India, so that is the Ladakh, we have the presence of Buddhism till late time period. So this shows that the Buddhism, which was emerged during the 6th century BCE, how gradually flourished not only in ancient India but also in a South Asian, Southeast Asian, and East Asian countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the detailed and uh, educative talk, sir. It was very
Thank
interesting to
you.
note all the different aspects of Buddhist philosophy. Thank you so much, sir. Uh, so, with your permission, shall we have a question and answer session at the end now?
Yes, yes, yes.
But before that, I would like to ask Professor R.M. Shadaksharaya, sir, to say a few words.
Thanks, Professor Shrikant Ganvir, Professor Deccan College, Pune. You have given a lengthy lecture on the origin and development of Buddhism. One can understand how the Buddhism it was started, against the existing Brahminical religion.
Sir,
The
could you pull the
fundamental
phone towards you a little bit? The voice is unclear.
India is well known in the international level about the existence of many religions. Buddhism is one of them. Buddhism it took birth by opposing the existing traditions and customs of the Vedic religion. Similarly, Jainism. Obviously, we can see three main branches: Jainism, Buddhism, and Ajivikas. That you have briefly remember at the beginning of your lecture. Really very interesting. But you have covered the sources, the Buddhist sources, the archaeological sources, and numismatic sources. Also, traditional aspects. The patrons of Buddhism you emphasized, in which we are largely giving importance to the political role, particularly royal families. The patronage of the royal family members are highly significant, and they were responsible for propagating one side the Buddhism, another side propagating the religion by establishing their monuments like stupas, viharas, or chaityas. That also you covered. In the historical development, you quoted from 6th century BC onwards, Mahajanapadas, next the Mauryas, particularly the role of the king Ashoka, his efforts, his contributions. Next, you quoted the Kushanas, but before that we said the Shatavahanas and the Buddhist centers in India, important centers in India. Next, the Guptas, post-Guptas, Harshavardhana, next to Padas. And the Buddhism, how it was expanded to Southeast Asian countries, that also you quoted in your lecture. Really, on the occasion of Buddha Purnima, you have satisfied us by giving your thought-provoking lecture. Really, we are grateful to you on behalf of our three organizations. One, International Society for Indian History and Archaeology. Second, International Virashaiva Jangama Research Center. Third, Akshara Foundation. Really, we are highly grateful to you for giving such an important lecture on the origin and development of Buddhism. And largely, what I can say, not just to the one province, but to the entire country. Many thanks to you, and also thanks to Manali, who took so much effort to formulate all the aspects to get a success our attempt. And also Dr. Jagdish Aswade, who also took equal interest to manage all the aspects. Next, Dr. K.S. Patil is also one of the executive committee member who also participated, and many our friends also participated in this online lecture. I am grateful to particularly Dr. Shrikant Ganvir for spending valuable time to share his thoughts before us. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much, Professor Shadaksharaya, sir. Sir, now I would like to take up a few questions that have been posted in the comment section. Uh, so the first question, before that, I would like to read out a comment by Bharatesh Shiriyapagowdar, sir, who is one of the executive members of the International Society for History and Archaeology. Very nice lecture he has written. Congratulations to the entire team. Sir, there's a question from Sudeep. Having worked in Sri Lanka as well, how would you compare the preservation and interpretation of Buddhist heritage in India and Sri Lanka?
Uh, in Sri Lanka, we have the some of the structures which follow the tradition of Vinay Pitak or the uh, Buddhist monastic rules. So the architecture spaces are very clearly defined. For the assembly, we have the Upathana Shala or Uposatagara, separate space. As I mentioned by Manali Madam, I work at a Rajagala. So the Rajagala is a site which is a spread in a 1078 acre, having more than 800 monuments. Out of that, around 250 are natural shrines, that is a natural rock shelters, further converted into structural rock cut caves. They are not rock cut caves like we have in a Western Deccan, like Ajanta or Ellora or Karle Bhaje. Those were basically originally uh, rock shelters, as we have in many parts of country, South India, North India, Central India, and the well-known example is the Bhimbetka. And those were such a rock shelters were further converted into by doing some addition of a structural activity or excavation into caves, rock cut caves, or what the better word would be, uh, rock shelter come monastic shelter. Then structural activity is at some of the places. Even I have been to the Anuradhapur and the Polonarawa. So probably there are the grand sites as well as the large size. Probably when you talk about the status of the preservation, so the most of the monuments are in a good state of preserve. So at Anuradhapur or at Rajgala, we find that because of the nature of the bricks, and also the because of the construction techniques, and also the various the preventive measures or the kind of the various strategies of a conservation in old times. I'm not talking about the modern time, which were gradually which were taken up. So in most of these sites, which we surveyed or visited, the condition of the preservation or the state of preservation was good. But we have the different types of the monastic architecture. So that is really surprising. The spaces were defined, and for the personal dwelling, for the community spaces, for the religious spaces, for the ritualistic spaces, like they have Bodhi Ghara. So the shrine which was established around the sacred Bodhi tree, as we know. It was Sanghamitra who took one of the branches of a Bodhi tree, and later on how the just worship of the Bodhi tree, or gradually flourished. So some of these such important structures are there.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of Sudeep, I have a question, sir.
Yeah.
As we all know, and as you also mentioned, there are three branches of Buddhism that are very prominent: Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. So, did their material culture and architecture built by the three different branches also differ? Did they have different traditions, and if so, how?
Yes, good question. Thank you for this question. So yes, we see a major difference in a material culture. Like in a Theravada was dominated by the symbolic or aniconic worship, so almost or complete absence of a Buddha image, followed by in Mahayana when we have basically the image worship or the iconic phase was dominating. So in Mahayana, the central figure or the central image was always of a Buddha or master. So we have basically, when we see the material culture or the archaeological remains, the Buddha, and along with accompanied by his disciples or the Bodhisattvas. And later on, when we further move to the Vajrayana, which witness the worship of not only the historical Buddha, but along with the many Buddhas, like what we call the, generally we know that is a Panchabuddhas, and generally they are referred to as Dhyani Buddha, but they are called as a Pancha Tathagata, along with the past Buddhas, and we have the concept of the Saptamanushi Buddha, along with the many Buddhist deities, Bodhisattvas, Buddhist goddesses. So, also in architecture, how the stupa was the main object of veneration in early phase, followed by the shrine come monastery, or what we have a kind of the Pratima Ghara or Pratima Gruha Kamak Vihara, and later on we have basically which was further continued with the further giving the spaces for the worship of many Buddhas, goddesses or the Bodhisattvas. So through the ages, as per the development in a basically the not I'm saying the teachings, but in a philosophical discourses, in a basically the concepts or the forms, we find that it was very well accommodated into the in the context, or in a spatio-temporal context, and in through the spatio-temporal context we find that how the transformation or the change could be located or could be mapped, in a different phases.
Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Jagdish Asode has posted a question. What were the key factors that contributed to the decline of Buddhism in India despite its early success? And especially when we put it in the context that in other Southeast Asian nations, Buddhism flourished and it has continued to flourish till today.
Thank you for this question. This is also a good question. So as we know, the if we look at the making of early Buddhism, it was a religion which was based on dialogue. So the early monastic centers, which were basically started constructing after the for development or the formulation or the development formulation or formulation of the concept of the rainy retreat, that is a Vassavasa in Pali, that is a or in Varshavasa in Sanskrit. So the early monasteries or monastic centers, they were kind of a temporary shelters or the for the members of the sangha, and after that we find that they used to always wander from one place to another for the well-being of society, that is charita bhikkhave charikam bhojanitaya bhojan sukha. Later we find that probably the Buddhism also underwent the process of the institutionalization, and this temporary places of accommodation became a kind of the permanent places or the permanent shelters. So probably always going or the wandering from one place to another for the propagation of the teachings of the master. So way of the kind of the communicating or interacting or kind of the dialogue, which was a very important force behind the, you can say, the early spirit and early success. So probably even that has been very well seen in a monastic architecture. In early monastic architecture of the Chaitya Grihas or early monasteries, we have the spaces for the community. Later on, we find that how the main shrine or the shrine with the Buddha image, then vestibule, and then mandap. There were kind of compartments or the kind of spaces. So the close association of a laity and the members of the monastic order, or that is the sangha, could not be remain for a long time. Otherwise, as we know, the education or the propagation of the teachings played a significant role. And then also probably from the 5th 6th century C, as we know that the revival of the many of the the revival and the development of many of the sects like Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shaktism, and also probably the royal patronage did not continue in many parts of the country as it was in earlier. Also, there was a shift in the basically the patronage from the trading or the mercantile community. So all these factors were collectively acted, and further one can see a kind of a degeneration resulting into the kind of decline in many parts of the ancient India. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. So I have another question in light of your excavation experiences. What new insights have recent excavations, such as those at Phanigiri or Chad, offered about monastic life and Buddhist architecture in the Deccan?
So so the Phanigiri has a excursions at Phanigiri have provided a kind of very important insights and a kind of a model that how we have a kind of the a monastic complex where we have a the religious spaces or the ritualistic spaces, that is a chaitya where the main object of worship was a stupa or Buddha image, followed by and those were center or the encircled by those were basically enclosed by a kind of the monastic spaces, that is dwellings, the monastic cells, that is the bhikkhu guras, and along with the kind of we have the sila mandap, that is a community hall. So each unit is a kind of very interesting, and basically the main unit, the Mahastupa, for which we have the word Mahachetiya in the inscription. Although we call them as a Mahastupa at Amravati or Mahastupa at Kanaganhalli, but inscription provides the word Mahachetiya. That is the Mahachaitya. So that seems to be the common for all kind of different monastic, you can say, the complexes. Now, as in absence of any epigraphic evidence, we do not cannot say at a present whether this different kind of the establishment where like site like at Phanigiri, where for the followers of different Buddhist sects, it remains a kind of question mark. But the space was very systematically used, and the kind of the assembly hall, or what we call as Upathana Shala or Uposatagara for the Uposatavat, which ceremony which usually used to hold on the organization on the occasions of the full moon day and new moon day. So the community spaces, the personal spaces, and the ritualistic spaces were very well you can systematically organize, and also one can see that how the same space was used in a different phases. So without demolishing the earlier structures, one can see the reconstruction of a new structure in a new phase. So that seems that how the earlier structures were their foundations were systematically reused. Yeah. Same at Chada, although not entire site is available for the excavation, as it belongs to the kind of a personal land, and the major part of has been under cultivation. But the portions where we carried out excavation, the Department of Heritage Telangana, in a collaboration with the Deccan College, carried out excavation. And the excavation is going on. Again, we find the Chaitya Guhas and the monastic spaces. So very interesting, the also the techniques, the how the floors were plastered, and how the basically the at different phases according to the requirement, the different kinds of the bricks were used.
So probably one has to look the structural architecture of the Deccan from a new perspective. It shows that how the structural architecture of early phase, that is the Satwan to Ikshwakus, was developed, vibrantly developed, and it has preserved a kind of less known or unknown facets of our knowledge of our ancient construction, or the civil engineering, what we call. So probably to understand our ancient Indian knowledge systems, this is a very important to see that how the bricks of for corner bricks, then bricks for the where the holes or the post holes are required. So the kind of the different requirements, the bricks of the outer wall or exterior, that which have generally the moldings. So how the different kinds of the bricks were prepared. It means that probably the brick manufacturing industry was a flourish in the region of Deccan, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Telangana, and southern, Maharashtra, or what we call in a major parts of Deccan. So a kind of the micro aspects of the ancient Indian construction and the construction techniques, you know, are going to come into limelight. Yes, thank you.
Very interesting indeed, sir, to see the developmental phases and how they were reused and renewed.
Yes,
Last year, when I visited the Nalanda Mahavihar, I observed similar shifts in settlements there. So, very interesting to note, sir. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Sudeep has asked another question. So, great lecture. I'm from Kerala. Can you tell us about any lesser known Buddhist sites in the South India that deserve more public attention?
Yeah, actually, there are many sites like in Tamil Nadu, we have the Nagapattanam. That was a very important center of Buddhism, which actually connected with the Southeast Asian and the East Asian countries. But now we hardly know about the Nagapattanam, and many of the artifacts are not on the site. So, in such case, the establishment of the site museum is very important. Department, I would like to mention here that Department of Heritage Telangana has taken initiatives, and they have established small site museum, and so that the establishment of the site museum is very important, so that any visitor who is going to see Phanigiri will able to see not only structural remains, but the architecture as well as sculptural remains, yeah, which are found in the excavation. So later on, they are also planning to develop, the museum. But now the site museum has been established. So such site museum at Nagapattanam is also important. So there are many more sites, in South India, which need, further attention. And we are excavating the Chada, which came into limelight almost 20 years before, just before because of the finding of one Buddha image. Now we found remains of few Buddha images and the remains of monastery and Chaitya. So there are many more such sites, especially in parts of the Tamil Nadu. Then another site is the Rajaghatta. The Rajaghatta is a very important site which was excavated by Professor M.S. Krishnamurti, who was a former head and former professor of Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology. And Rajaghatta site has provided very interesting evidence about the upside Chaitya Guru, where we have the stupa which was enshrined, or which was constructed in the center, at the back, and during its during its excavation, they found the small stupas, kind of devoted stupas, along with the A Dharma Hetu Prabhava formula, which is a kind of very important and sacred Buddhist formula. And excavators also found many types of the bricks, but now this site has not been preserved. So hardly anyone knows about the site of Rajaghatta. Professor M.S. Krishnamurti sir has published its a report, which has been published by Department of Archaeology and Museums, Government of Karnataka, recently. So probably in future, such sites could have been preserved, and again those structures could have been reopened, and could have been preserved, and such sites could have been developed for the heritage tourism. So the Rajagala is such a site, yeah, and this is probably the most southern extension in the Karnataka. So located near the cities of Bangalore, Mysore, this is a very important site. And again, not entire site or the maximum portion of the site, which is permitted according to the rules of Archaeological Survey of India, has been excavated. So for there is a further scope of the further excursion of the monastery and other remains, so that we will have a fair idea about the monastic complex, which is a very late monastic complex, Buddhist monastic complex in for Karnataka, southern Karnataka. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Last couple of questions. Dr. K, I'm sorry I did not catch the name. How many Adi Buddha images found in India and outside? The extension of that question. What is the historical significance of Adi Buddhas? And he has also asked, the Mahachaityas were said to be visited by Ashoka. Is that information correct?
So the we have very few Adi Buddha images. As we know that Adi Buddha images are a little late development in the concept of the Pancha Tathagata. So their images are very rare and found mostly in Bihar and Bengal, and generally we don't get those images in many centers. Yeah. And we have also very less information, as we know that many times the reports of architecture, archaeological surveys, explorations, and even reports of many of the excavation sites are not published. So that is why probably I'm not able to give the number in a very precise as such. But the Adibuddhas are very rare, and as we know that that is a very late development related to the concept of the Panchatathagata. So that started from the 7th 8th century CE and gradually developed mostly in northern and eastern India, and not to Mahachaityas, but the Mauryan Emperor Ashok had visited the sacred sites associated with the Buddha. So if you go by his journey, as mentioned in a Buddhist text like Ashokavdan and others, we find that he visited Lumbini, Kapilvastu, then Vaishali, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath. So actually, he visited the all Shravasti, to mention a few. King Ashok had visited all important sites along with his spiritual teacher, who played very important role in bringing him Buddha's teaching or master's teaching. That is a Bhikkhu Upagupta, as mentioned in the basically Ashoka Avatar. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. So I have one last question, which is about the relevance. So, in the current context, what lessons can Buddhism offer about conflict resolution, mental health, and environmental ethics? All three being very burning questions of the current day.
Thank you for this question. As we know that the uh, if you look at the central teachings of the Buddha, it was centered around the understanding the dukkha. It was not only talking about the sufferings. Although Buddha said that the jata pi dukkha, jara pi dukkha, maranam pi dukkha, so apriya sampayogo dukkho, priyahi vipayogo dukkho. But that is a kind of the realistic that how the sufferings have been created in a individual life and community life. So probably the mindfulness, the way to not in everyone's case possible to giving up completely cravings, but the control, how one can control the cravings or the tanna, that is a trishna. And also Buddhism also talk about the ecology, because when we are living in this world, so the care of the environment, the care of the ecology is a equally important as we take care about human beings or ourselves. So, as we know, the always whenever there was a kind of the issue of the crisis, as Buddhism talks about the non-violence, peace, and that is why the theory is known as a middle path. Yeah. So there are the various teachings of the Buddha where Buddha talks that how one can find the middle path. Finally, how the human life further leads to the very peaceful, serene atmosphere, along with the presence of the loving kindness, what Buddha told as a metta, and the compassion, that is a karuna. So as we move further, in the further development of Buddhism, the karuna, the concept of the karuna, that is compassion, becomes more dominating, and really that is why how the Mahan Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy, or the the teachings of the Buddha, as mentioned in the Mahan Buddhism, attracted the during the early medieval and late medieval period in a many kind of the Buddhist countries. So the observance of the Eightfold Path, and basically the teachings, centered teachings about the anicca, that is impermanence, the role of the kamma, that is action. So probably these are the kind of the basic values, and their teachings will further will help us to understand the realistic view of the life. So once someone understands the realistic view of the life, along with the its holistic nature, so probably we'll able to come over this crisis. So as a student of ancient history, culture, and a student of Buddhism for a couple of years, what I have understood, yeah, from the teaching of the master. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. That was indeed a very good answer. Definitely, we must understand Buddhism in order to apply it to our lives. It is not just a philosophy, it is not just an ideal, it is a way of life. As you said, it is a middle path that can be a solution, an ancient solution to modern problems. So, definitely, we must all take a plunge into that. So, sir, we have come to the end of the question answer session. If anybody else has any other questions, it can be posted later on, because there will be viewers who will watch this lecture later on YouTube. So, if anybody posts any questions, we will send it to you on your email, sir,
Yes.
later. So, we have come to the end of today's lecture. So, if there is anything else you want to add, a message or something before we go.
So um, so on the occasion of the Buddha Purnima, I just give to the message that the uh, being a citizen, it is very important to preserve our heritages. That is the culture heritages, that includes the tangible, intangible, as well as the natural heritage. So this would be the kind of our tribute to the Buddha's teaching to preserve the heritage. So heritage also includes the preservation of the values, or the principles which has been taught by our ancient religious traditions and philosophies. So how we can basically preserve and cultivate, preserve for the future generations, and how we can cultivate among the members of the society. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Absolutely important message that you have given. We must definitely safeguard our heritage, because without our heritage, we have no identity, and our heritage defines us as a society, because we are the culmination of the dialogue between the past and the present. We are today what we are because of the past. So, as you have said, we must definitely, and not only the tangible heritage. So, you are doing a great service to India through your excavations and conservation work, and we are thankful for you to you for that. And we will also definitely resolve from this platform to safeguard our intangible heritage, which includes our values and culture, as you have given the message. Now, I would like to hand over to Dr. Aditya Hegde to propose the vote of thanks. Before
Thank you.
that, if anybody else, sir, if anybody else has to add something before we leave, please feel free. Yeah, I think there is nothing. So over to you, Aditya, sir.
Okay. Namaste and greetings of Buddha Purnima, everybody. On the occasion of Buddha Purnima, International Society for Indian History and Archaeology, International Virashaiva Jangama Research Pratisthana and Akshara Foundation, uh, Dharwad, organizing the webinar on origin of Buddhism in ancient India. In this webinar, today's our resource person, Dr. Shrikant Ganvir sir, delivered a thoughtful and insightful lecture. On the behalf of three organizations, I thank to our resource person, Dr. Shrikant Ganvir sir. And I also thanks to Dr. R.M. Virashaiva sir, retired professor and director of Kannada Research Institute and our senior teacher for his presidential remarks. I extend to my thanks to presidents and office bearers of the uh, three organizations and the members of the three organizations for allowing us to have a thoughtful webinar. At last but not the least, I thanks to our viewers and listeners. Without them, we can't able to have a webinars and lectures. So, in this webinar, people like professors, senior professors, research scholars, students uh, participated from the various colleges, universities from the Karnataka and outside the Karnataka. Uh, I thank them, all of them, for their participation and participation in the question answer session and participated as the active member of the webinar. So I thank all of them. At the end, I thank you, all of the people who participated in the webinar. Thank you one and all. Over to Manali.
Thank you, Aditya, sir, for the vote of thanks. And promise to see you all very soon with something new and something interesting. We can learn so much. And today was a very successful webinar, a very successful lecture, as Dr. Aditya has said. So, see you all soon, hopefully. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are signing off here. Thank you, sir.